Hello and welcome to 73 and Sunny, the podcast about the journey of getting things just right. We talk to tech, sales, and marketing leaders about how they're growing, dialing in best practices, and getting closer to that sweet spot. This has been a big week for the consumer engagement industry. On Wednesday, the FCC voted to change the rules for how businesses can gain consent to reach out to customers. And we thought it would be a great opportunity to help people understand the changes and how it's going to affect things moving forward. Our guest today could change the way you think about customer outreach. She is the director of carrier relations for Verse.ai, possibly the most important title that you never knew existed. We wanted to talk with her about the new, possibly extremely disruptive FCC ruling regarding consumer consent and ways that businesses can text their customers safely and effectively. Thank you for joining us, Mandy.
Hi, I'm happy to be on board.
It's like we said, it's been a big week, right?
It's been a huge week. We knew it was coming. It's not really, new news, but we weren't sure how it was going to rule, and it ruled kind of the way that we expected it to.
Well, and we're going to get into it. We're going to talk all about what happened on Wednesday, what it means for businesses moving forward. But can we start, Mandy, with what your background is? Where did you come from, and what do you do at Verse?
Yeah. So my background is actually in finance to begin with. That's how I started my career. Then for the last 10 years, I've actually been working in carrier relations for telecom companies. Um, Basically, within carrier relations, it's, building your vendor partnerships, making sure that you're compliant on a federal and state level, keeping up to date with everything, either on the vendor carrier side, best practices, and also on the federal and state regulations that are, coming through and that are going to be coming in our future. So that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years.
So for those out there, and I think I probably can count myself as one of them up until whatever 2.5 years ago. Verse, in my time at Verse, we've had to get more familiar with TCPA and rules around customer outreach. But can you tell us what is a carrier and why do they matter to what Verse does?
Absolutely. So, for a company like Verse and any company that's, doing any kind of digital engagement, whether it's via the phone, email, or through SMS, the carriers are what actually, send the inbound and outbound of that traffic. So carriers are extremely important in our livelihood to be able to engage with our consumers, to be able to send our traffic to the consumers for them to be able to receive it. The carriers are the ones that allow all that traffic to pass through to make sure that it's delivered on time. And, with all the best practices, they do have a lot of rules and regulations that they apply, and they make sure that we're doing the best thing for our consumers.
And so the carriers are so tell me if I'm wrong, but it's like Verizon, T-Mobile. Am I right about that?
Yeah, so there's several major carriers. So T-Mobile, Verizon, AT&T are the large impact carriers. They're the ones that come up with the rules and regulations. The reason why businesses carry about carriers is that's the only way that you're able to deliver your engagement, right? So whether you're talking on the phone and, I'm calling, say, my mom or my grandma, I have to pick up the phone, I have to dial it. How that phone call gets routed is through the carrier. They're the ones that actually deliver it, pick up my intention, and then deliver it to the end user. Same with SMS. When you send an SMS text message, what you're sending out has to be routed through a carrier in order for it to be received onto the other side of whoever the receiver is of my text message. So they're extremely important in our world. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to, have any kind of deliverability traffic from one end to the other.
And so, and again, I'm going to try and summarize, but you can tell me if I'm right. The carrier relations role that you have at Verse is to make sure that the messages that are getting sent on behalf of these businesses are getting delivered, and that the carriers are either allowing this traffic to continue or the conversations to continue, and that they're not blocking anyone. Does that summarize what a carrier relations role is?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
it's all the way from negotiating the contracts to getting the best pricing to making sure that what we're trying to do, which is deliver an SMS message, actually goes through without filtering, without blockage. And we're, basically always looking at what their best practices and how they're changing that and complying with our SMS traffic to make sure that it does get delivered on the other side.
And so a couple of things that the carriers are looking for would be A, that the leads have been opted in so that the consumers have given consent somewhere and inquired on online on a form that has the correct terms and conditions, and that all those the opt-in is laid out in a way that's understandable and clear. And so they're looking for that, but they're also looking that the carriers are making sure that you're not sending messages that have kind of scammy or spammy type offers in them. Is that fair to say too?
Yeah, absolutely. So it starts off with the brand of a company, right? So they're going to vet your brand first to make sure that you're a legit verified company. Then they want to look at your campaigns to see what your campaign, what your call to action is. What is it that you're trying to do? What kind of messages are you trying to deliver? So they look at all of that and they go through the approval process through all of that on a company level. And then after that's done, then yes, they look to make sure that you actually have consent language on your website where the consumer is actually consenting to receive your text message, which is called opt in. So they're looking at all that to make sure that you are not scamming or spamming somebody. They within that have an algorithm that they look at where they're pulling out keywords that look very spammy or scammy. And they're constantly monitoring to make sure that the text messages that you're sending out are not only compliant by the fact that you have opt in and the consumer wants to receive your text message, but that also that you're not using spam words or trying to, do uh, get rich fast schemes and things like that. So they're constantly monitoring all that to make sure that their biggest thing is consumers, right? So
Yeah.
they want to make sure that they lessen the consumer complaints by having legit verified text messages that are going out.
So this gets to what we were going to talk about today, which is what the FCC voted on this week on Wednesday. They voted to adopt a rule that closes the lead generator loophole, which we spoke about a little bit more in depth. If you want to go back and listen to the podcast with David Tall, the CEO of Verse.ai, you can listen to kind of what the lead generator loophole is a little bit more in depth. But I'll give you a really quick summary here, and then we can get into what they did and what it means moving forward. But essentially, the lead generator loophole allowed businesses to, when a consumer was opting in for one thing, let's say it's a mortgage, they were opting in to have one of what a mortgage company call them. But when they got to the terms and conditions, the T's and C's on the opt-in form, there was a little blue hyperlink that connected to a list of all the partners that they could sell your data to, and people weren't clicking on the hyperlink because who does that? And so people were giving their consent, and then they were getting, if you're interested in a mortgage, you might be getting calls, and you might not have known this is why, but you'd be getting calls potentially from like businesses that had nothing to do with mortgage because they would sell your contact information to like a home warranty company or a company that was kind of adjacent to mortgage but not necessarily related to what you were interested in, because they had already gotten your consent to sharing your data with these other businesses. And so what they were aiming to do from a consumer perspective was to protect consumers from getting all these random robo dials and phone calls from these companies that they didn't think they were opting in for, but they actually were. So the FCC this week voted on a rule to attempt to try and stop that. So whether they did that or not is still is whether that will work to do what it aims to do is yet to be determined. But can we go into a little bit? Uh, Tell me about how this rule, the proposed rule and now passed rule, will affect businesses moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So, uh, from the consumer side, the way that the carriers were looking at this is they were receiving about 86 billion consumer complaints per year for spam texts and calls. So they're really trying to shut down on that. They're really trying to help the consumer from, not receiving scam communication. So the way that they have now chosen to do that, or what they put into their ruling, is one-to-one consent from the seller. So the seller has one-to-one consent with the consumer. So like you said, you can no longer use a hyperlink that takes you to a web page with 5,000 other affiliates on their web page, saying that you're really going to get actually robocalls and texts from all of these companies. Like you said, nobody really reads the fine print, right? So they're really trying to lessen the impact of the consumer complaints that are out there by being, not only is it one-to-one consent where now businesses will have to list out all of the sellers or the affiliates that they work with, that in the sense of maybe having a checkbox, right? So at the top of it, it would have the disclaimer of you're opting in, and your opt-in disclaimer with help for help, stop for stop, all of that good stuff in there. But then after that, they want you to apply each seller or each person that you're doing business for or going to sell the data to. They want you to list every single company on that form. And you can't have it to where it's like check all boxes at once, like select all. The consumer has to individually go in and select each box. So they're giving one-to-one consent for every single one of those sellers to then communicate with you via text or via phone call. The
So,
other
go ahead,
Sorry.
please.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say a real world example would be something like a comparison shopping website where, uh, to use an example of like a solar, you want to get a quote for solar panels for your house.
Right.
You provide some information. They call it a funnel, but usually you go through some questions about the size of your house and how much energy you're using, what your electricity bill is, and then you get to the end of, we've all been through this, but you get to the end and you're supposed to fill out your name and your phone and your email, and that's going to consent for whoever that this comparison shopping website is partnering with, and they're going to share your information with those businesses. What you're saying is, when they get to the end, rather than having a hyperlink that lists all of their partners and thousands of partners, where you wouldn't be clicking on that, you might be opting in for something that you don't expect. You're actually physically having to choose which companies that you are interested in having reach out. Is that a fair way to describe the new ruling?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what the new ruling is that, they want the consumer to have control of who actually calls and texts them. So with that, yes, having the checkbox to where consumer is g- giving consent to each one of those sellers by clicking the boxes that you can reach out to them. And not only have they done that, but they've also put in this other part of the ruling, which is they call topical and logical, right? So within that, that means that if you're a good service provider, you can't have, say if you're a mortgage company, you can't list affiliates that are then as car insurance, solar companies, student loans. So it has to be topical and logical within the comparison site itself too, which is going to make a really big difference because, right now consumers are, you apply for a mortgage loan, or you go to get a quote for a mortgage loan, and then all of a sudden all of these other companies that are not topical and logical to what the consumer consented originally looking for are now reaching out, right? So not only is it a checkbox system that they're going to implement, but also it has to be topical and logical.
Do, topical and logical sounds somewhat vague. Do you so let's say, and so is there any clarity on, and so what I'm thinking is an idea of, in the example of a solar, I want to get a quote for a solar panel for my house, and they share my information, or I'm opting in potentially for roofing or something related. It sounds topical. It may be part of the same purchase. It sounds logical that I might also be interested in a roof. Those things are often purchased together. Are there guidelines for what topical and logical is, or are they waiting for someone to mess up, take them to court, and find out if that's if a court will consider that specific incident to be topical and logical?
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that they're going to try and stay away from, um, you know, being sued or any litigation out there. That's not really their purpose of actually, coming up with rules and regulations. It's so that way you don't have litigation against you. As far as topical and logical, until, in about 30 days, we're actually going to see this ruling published. Within that, they have said that there's going to be edits. So we don't know what those edits are, right? So we're still waiting, and we have about 30 days before this ruling is actually published before we know exactly what the ruling is going to be and what it consists of. As far as the specifics of it, like you said, with topical and logical, like what does that really even mean? At this point, that the way that they're using examples is if a consumer is on a web page for a roofing company, then it's only roofing that they're consenting to. They're not looking out there for a solar company, for an insurance company, or a homeowner's warranty company. That's not why they originally went onto your webpage, right? Looking for a roofing. So that's kind of how they're considering topical logical at this moment.
Well, this is huge for a large number of companies. There's an entire industry built around lead generation where what they call co-reg or co-registered data, which has been, again, maybe not the most uh, sophisticated. Well, it's very sophisticated, but maybe not the cleanest of industries in terms of like the data sharing and data brokering and people selling leads who, from people who are opted in for one thing and are getting calls about something completely different. So those businesses are going to completely have to change their models, and as well as the companies that are in good standing, like Lending Tree or other comparison shopping sites that we value a lot, where we get to see different companies, different rates. It helps do some of the homework for us. We can, they're validated by being on the site in the first place, but also we get to compare everything in one place, which seems like a place where the consumers would win. What 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 how does this rule affect businesses that buy leads?
Oh, it's going to impact them extremely, right? So you won't be able to just buy a lead, and who you bought the lead from has the actual direct consent, which you don't. You maybe received a token that you could download. That's no longer going to exist. You have to be able to take the consent from the seller that you're buying the lead from and directly report that as though you now have consent, and you have to hold that documentation as though you got consent, right? So it really changes that lead generation industry tremendously. There's not going to be where you can just go to mass market or go to a portal and just buy a mass amount of leads. Even age leads are probably going to go out of existence as far as what's prohibited. This is going to be huge impact, right? The good thing about this is that the leads that you are going to be able to purchase. So a lot of businesses look at quality over quantity. No, I apologize. A lot of businesses look at quantity over quality. So what this is going to change is the quality of your lead may cost you more, but it's actually going to give you better service, and your consumer is going to engage with you because they are wanting to hear from you, right? So the quality of the leads are going to increase as far as what you can purchase out there because you are getting direct consent. It is topical and logical. So it really does impact a lot of businesses that are just, marketing their businesses off of buying leads out there, right?
Yeah, I can totally imagine that obviously the quantity of leads will drop because every lead isn't being sold to five different people automatically, right? Five different
Oh, you
different
froze on
businesses.
me.
When you get to the end of one of those funnels and you're clicking on only one or two businesses that for whatever reason you have trust in, the chances that you respond to that lead are just going to increase, right? So the people who are getting chosen at the end of those funnels are going to see huge increases in engagement rates, probably big increases in conversion rates overall,
Yeah.
but probably the cost of those leads, because the companies that are selling those leads are going to have to absorb the costs of not being able to sell it five times. The
Right.
costs are going to go up, but there's going to be a lot less time wasted. I'm sure you're going to see almost probably doubling and tripling of engagement and qualification rates, right?
Right. So, this is not only a positive impact for the consumer as far as not receiving hundreds and hundreds of robo-texts and calls, but it's also really great for taking your company and your brand to the next level. This is going to just build your reputation as a brand and as a company because you're engaging with consumers that want to hear from you and that are going to engage back. So your outreach is just going to be, it's going to affect it in a very positive way, right? Your opt out rates are going to be a lot less, which is a good thing, right? Your engagement and as far as your business striving through this and actually building better relationships is all going to be positive.
So if you're a business in getting ready for the new year, knowing that these rules are coming down and probably going into effect in 2024, what steps are you taking to get ahead of this coming change?
Yeah, so I think that, from a business perspective, you definitely want to dot your I's and cross your T's and be very compliant and do all the research that you possibly can in compliance. This is a big time to kind of get ahead of the game and do your homework with compliance and make sure that your business is doing everything compliant and legit. The other thing is start looking at your website, start looking at your affiliates that you have listed on your website, start making those check boxes, start getting ahead of the game with making sure that your direct one-to-one consumer consent is on your form. Don't wait 6 months from now where you're struggling and you have to shut down your business because you're no longer compliant. Start doing those things now. Start working with CRM companies or other technology companies that where you're buying your lead from. They have fraud detection. They have all of this other filtering that they're doing that can really help your business to where you're getting good positive consent leads, right? So those are things that you can start working with and start working on to, be ready for summer of 2024.
Yeah, and I know some of the industry, the lead industry leaders are already working on this. Jornaya, Active Prospect, um, PX, Bobberdo. They're all these companies that have been working with people who are in this lead space are working on ways to help these businesses stay compliant. One other thing that I think is probably a godsend from this ruling is that it'll finally be a time for businesses to start focusing on first party data, which is where they should be focusing anyway, right? So the benefits of having first party data and owning your own consent is you own your own consent, so you don't have to worry about someone sending you a token or having the lead be resold or having compliance be an issue because you own the language, you own the journey of that consumer, they come through your portal, but you're also going to get a bunch more attribution data because you're going to see them come through rather than not owning any of it, meaning if you buy a lead from a third party vendor where they've gone through a landing page and they've been shown some content for whatever content that got them to that page, and
Mhm.
that may or may not be transparent, you might just get the contact data and reach out to someone without knowing what they've been doing or where they've been going or what they've been shopping for. If they come to
Right.
your website, if you're in charge of your own destiny in terms of lead generation, the consumer comes to your site, views your content, goes through your journeys, downloads your white papers, or downloads your content, or views your content, and then they go through your portal with your consent. You own all of it. And moving forward with the business, particularly as AI tools are coming down the pike, you want to have all the data you can get so that you're able to utilize those AI tools when they ask, you know, when you want to ask the AI tool, show me the best, show me the most likely journey for a consumer on our website. Show me, use heat maps to tell me where I should be investing more in advertising and which websites I should be optimizing for, or where should we be sending people for landing pages. So there's all these different advantages that you have for getting first party data, but I think people have been kind of hooked on the third party stuff because it's been kind of a consistent sort of business source of business, and they've have these partnerships that have been long standing, and it was a lot more consistent probably in the past to be like have a contract with one of these third party lead vendors to send you a certain number of records per month or leads per month. But I think this is the opportunity, especially now as things are transitioning, for businesses to go invest in first party data, invest in getting people to come to their website. And in the short term, it's probably going to be a large drop in volume, but in long term, it's going to be much better to own the funnel.
Absolutely, right? That comes down to the quality over quantity thing, right? So we kind of need to step away from quantity and look more at quality. And like you said, the quality of all of the people that are visiting your websites, all the analytics that you can get from it to be able to use your AI tools and all of that, that is just going to take your business to the next level. And
Yeah.
it's such a positive gain for the business, right? And then also, if a consumer has a very good experience and has a user-friendly experience with your business, look at all the referrals that you're gonna get. The consumer is gonna refer your business and say, "Hey, go to this website. They, were no nonsense. I didn't get all of these other calls. I didn't get all of these other texts. Like they were legit." And so the referral system is gonna be great too.
Yeah, and I wonder from an ad spend perspective, if a lot of these third party lead vendors die because they were not following the rules or they were bad actors in the first place, if all those ad dollars disappear, this might be the best time from a first party lead perspective to go grab those keywords and to go take advantage of the vacuum in the market where they can, I remember in the real estate, when we were working with a lot of real estate companies, there you basically had the option of buying leads from Zillow or competing against them in SEO and trying to get traffic to your website, and which you're going to lose, right? So that when you're in a market where you have a big third party lead vendor like Zillow taking up a lot of the space, it's really hard to compete against that. You have to be really diligent with your SEO and with advertising, and that may still be may still be too big within the real estate industry. But there are a lot of industries where there might be some openings for businesses to invest more in first party and getting first party leads to their own websites, and then start kind of building that part of their business. If there is a time to do it, it's probably now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's, don't sit on your hands, definitely act now. You have 6 months to kind of get your business to the most legit, most verified company that you can be, right? So going off of everything that you said, it's, start acting now, start, look, redoing your research, invest in those technology companies that can really take your brand and your business to the next level to where you are getting all that first party, right?
Yeah.
It's it's never too late to begin now, you know.
Well, Mandy, thank you so much for being with us. I think we learned a lot. If there are any questions that anyone has about how this FCC ruling is going to affect your business, or you'd like to learn about how Verse is helping businesses to stay compliant and helping businesses with first-party data, we'd love you to come to the website Verse.ai and check us out and book a demo and learn a bit more. Mandy is in charge of our carrier compliance team, who is going to be protecting the business from getting leads blocked or getting messages blocked by the carriers, for making sure that you're registered and correctly registered with the carrier, so that all of that stuff is deliverable. And we're so grateful to have you on. Thank you for sharing all that you know, Mandy.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. And yeah, like you said, let's take those businesses to the next level and help them all with the compliance issues and take it off their plate. We can do all that for them.
Thank you. And anyone who enjoyed this, please subscribe and hit the like button so that you get future podcasts that add value to your business. Thank you so much for joining us at 73 and Sunny.